What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. This is Ginger Auto and my name is Skylar, and we are going to be working on the Impreza today. First, I would like to start off by saying thank you to everyone who watches the videos and leaves feedback and comments. I love reading the comments and I love replying to them, whether it's good or bad. I know I could do things better, and I know a lot of you guys have more experience than I do even, so there's people out there who are saying, hey, you should do this next time, or why didn't you do it this way? And I like hearing that because I don't know everything. I'm learning as I go, so thank you all. And if you guys ever have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them, whether it's on Instagram or on YouTube. I am pretty good at responding to everybody, and I love hearing the criticism, good or bad. So thank you all. You guys are awesome. Let's get into this video. We're going to start working on the harness and cleaning up the engine bay. So let's get going. So this is where I'm at currently on the engine bay. I removed the manifold in the last video, and I have been figuring out what I'm doing for the engine harness. I decided to go the route of utilizing the stock cars, the stock power wires and all that, instead of making my own relays. I'll still have to do my own relays for my ignition coils, my coil packs, my radiator fan, and I'm going to run another relay when I have to run dual pumps. So yeah, that's the route I decided to go. I don't know if it's better or worse. The way I see it, I'm already still using the stock ECU to run a few things, so might as well just leave it there. It's not in the way. The only thing that bothered me was how much of the stock harness was still inside the engine bay, but I got rid of that. I'm going to be running everything behind the firewall. My wiper motor and grounds I have going through there, but it'll be tucked. I can fill these two holes, and then I'll be running my harness out of this hole here, and I'll be able to tuck it in. So these are the power wires that I'm keeping, and then these are actually the reverse lights. So these will go to the plug on the transmission, and then these are the power wires I'm using. I'm going to use them for the boost control solenoid, and this one for my O2 sensor. And then there's a couple others that I'm using. The starter wire, I just went around the firewall and I'm coming out of this grommet hole, and then this goes to the starter. So that's the ignition starter wire. So what I need to do here is I am cutting these and adding a plug so that I can plug these into my harness behind the firewall. That way the harnesses aren't like wrapped together, they are plugged together. That way if I still need to pull my Megasquirt harness, I can do so without having to cut anything. So I will do that, and then it will be time to start figuring out how I want to run the ECU in my glove box. So I will do that and get back to you guys. So I got that plug done and tucked behind the firewall. The plugs that I used for these are just these ones that I got off of actually Amazon, and they seem to be well made, and they have the weather proof plugs in them, so I think they will work good. We come look, if you look back here, you can see back there is where the plugs are going to be, and I decided that I'm just going to keep my ECU in the same position which was right here. I like it. I think it looks good. If I turn it sideways, it's kind of awkward for the plug angles here and then the plug angle here. And then I would have to wrap the harness wires funkily around the ECU, and it's just not going to look as good as having it like this. So what I'm going to do is trim it a little more down here and see if I can bring it in 2 more inches, because then I think I'll have the clearance that I can clear this plug and I'll be able to close it, and it'll make it a lot easier for driving around and tuning so that the glove box isn't hitting you in the knees. So I will be taking the dash piece out, trimming that hole, and then see how it mounts, and then we can start talking about wiring. Alright, got everything in and installed. Open the door. ECU's further back. Able to keep it plugged in. And close the door. So, perfect. That's exactly how I want it. So I guess now let's get onto the harness. So here we have the Megasquirt MS3X harnesses, and this is how you will receive them from DIY Auto Tune, which is the Megasquirt website. So here you have MS3X harness, which means it's just the expansion board that is inside the ECU, and both come with a diagram on suggestions on how you can wire it up and what each wire function does. So here is the MS3X harness, and it says has all your sparks, all your outputs, injectors, and then over here this has the injectors and spark as well, but this is just the MS3X harness. This is the expansion. So together they can do a lot more functions and run the engine with more inputs and outputs. So I guess before we get into tearing this apart to rebuild our own, let's learn about how an ECU works. Alright, before we get into this whole wiring adventure, I'd like to break down, for those of you who don't know or don't have a full understanding of how an ECU works, kind of break it down and explain to you how it makes an engine run. So first off, you have your ECU, and this is the computer of the car. This is the brain of it. This is what tells it what to do, and you are just supplying it with sensors which will take that information and it will decide what to do with it. So first off, your most important things are your cam and crank inputs. These are important because the crank is telling the ECU where the crankshaft is, and the cam sensor is telling the ECU where the camshaft is. If the engine knows where these two things are while they spin, then it can know when to control things such as your spark plugs and your injectors. So now that they have the crank and cam sensors, they need what's called inputs. Inputs are what you would call your sensors. So everything such as your coolant temperature sensor, your air intake temperature sensor, your O2 sensors, these are all taking information and sending it to the ECU. So you have your coolant temperature sensors, your air intake sensors, O2 sensors, and any other sensor that isn't on your car. So pretty much anything that has a sensor in the name are going to be inputs. Crank and cam sensors, they are both inputs. This is all information going into the ECU. So now that the ECU has the information coming in, it can now determine what it can do with the outputs. These outputs are going to be your injectors, your spark. It can be really anything, your fuel pump. This can be anything that the ECU is telling what to do, if that makes sense. It is taking all the information from the inputs, the sensors, and creating outputs. So how this all relates to the harness, the harness is what connects all these things together. All right, now we know how it works. Let's set it up so it can work properly. The very first thing that you want to do if you are getting an MS3X ECU to run your Eg33 engine is you're going to want to buy a VR conditioner, which that will help eliminate any of the noise for your cam and crank sensors, since they are the most important sensors. And you also I would suggest for you to get a dual NOx sensor chip, which both of those you can get on their website. And I'm not going to go over how to install them because, for one, I didn't do it on my own. I bought it that way. And two, there are lots of write-ups that you can look up, and they'll give you a step-by-step on how to install those. But if you don't do that, you're going to have problem with noise in your sensors. And the Eg33 comes with dual NOx sensors, so why not use it? And then you can have a safety net if you ever get bad fuel or your engine's running hot and starts knocking. Your ECU can pull timing and can save your engine. So those are the first things I would do. Next thing I would do is pull apart the harness. Here you have your crank sensor wires. This is called a shielded wire. And what it is it has the wires inside, and then there is a third wire that wraps around everything and grounds at the ECU, and that is so it can collect all of the electromagnetic currents that may be trying to penetrate these wires, and you'll get fault signals that way. It will take all that and it will ground it out at the ECU. That way we're not getting fault signals. The crank sensor already has one. For some reason the cam sensor doesn't have one, so I bought some from DIY Auto Tune, and I'm going to be installing for the cam sensor as well, because those you don't want noise at all. And then I'm also going to be running it for my knock sensors, which here it shows, this is from my old harness. My knock sensors are wired through these pins, and then my VR conditioner is ran through these pins. So here we have my cam sensors running through these now, and then my crank sensor is running through these two pins. So it's using the stepper, idle air control wire, as well as the stock crank position sensor wire, but it is now ran through the VR conditioner. So I have to make sure that I do my wiring according to this sheet. So that's what I'm going to be doing first before I do anything, is install the cam sensor shield wire as well as the knock sensor shielded wire. So let's get to that. Alright, so I finally finished tying all these shielded wires in. We have crank sensor, cam, and knock sensors all tied in. The main thing to remember when doing shield wires is, especially with Megasquirt, is they want the shields to be shielded out, grounded out at the designated shield in the ECU. So here, this represents a shielded wire, and then you can see it is pin 2 on the Megasquirt harness. So all of the shields here, you can see, are tied into the designated shield at the ECU. So don't forget your shield wires. That's the whole point, the whole purpose of the shielded wires. So yeah, I'm gonna put the connector cover back on, label the shielded wires, and done with this step. Alright guys, it is a couple of days later from where I left off. The next step is to throw the ECU into the car with it hooked up to the harness and get the length it will be to our firewall. So I'm going to install the ECU, and then I will pull my harness through this hole right here, because that is where I'm choosing to have my harness come through the firewall, just because it is further away from the exhaust, so I won't have to worry as much about it warming up and all that stuff. So I need to mark with some green tape where it's coming through the firewall, and then I think I will call it good for this video because I need to do a little work to the intake manifold before I can continue with the wiring, but that will be the next video. Alright guys, this is where I'm going to call the video. We made some great progress on the harness and I'm excited to keep going on that. We're kind of at a standstill for now with the harness because there are a lot of things that I'm going to be switching up in the engine bay, which will mean that I need to switch up the wiring, such as the throttle body, and I'm going to try and maybe relocate the coil packs just for a cleaner look. So thank you all for watching. It means a lot to me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, especially about wiring. I will try and answer them in the next wiring video. I love helping you guys and I love reading your comments, so keep them coming. If you haven't yet, subscribe so you can keep up with my videos, and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.